Okay, so I have baked two sets of figures here, the little girl and the toddler, and unfortunately I forgot to wiggle the toothpicks in the holes to make them loose before I baked the figure, so the toothpicks I couldn't get out and I had to break them off, and I'm going to have to drill little holes down through the toothpicks in these three limbs, 2 feet and 1 hand, in order to insert the wire. So the next thing is to twist the wire. Now initially I got some silver wire, but it proved to be too thin and it began to snap a lot, so I got some cotton wire instead. This is 0.6 millimeters, and we have to twist it to make it thick enough for these limbs. So take an approximate length, put the one end in the end of a pair of pliers, slip your finger in the loop from the other end and begin to twist. And then when you've got a little twisted bit at one end, slip the pliers up, hold the twisted bit and continue to twist. And continue to do that right to the end, in which you'll have to take your finger out of the wire and twist it manually until the whole length of the wire is twisted reasonably tightly. And if there are any loose bits, twist those to make it a regular thickness and strength. Then snip the end off where the little loop is so that you've got a clean end to the wire. Take a drop of super glue. I use Gorilla super glue gel. Gel is much easier to control than liquid glue. Drop a tiny bit of glue in. Let's see if it's open. Yeah, okay. Okay, I'll just see why the glue's not working. Okay, so you dip one end of the copper wire in the super glue, pop it through the hole in the shoulders, bend it. First of all, put the hand on with the super glue on the end, bend it to the approximate length. With a toddler, the hands won't come down quite as low as with an adult. Bend the other side and clip off a little bit more than you think with the pliers. It's always better to have more to play around with than less, and do the same for the other side. So just twisting some more copper wire to make it thick enough, holding it in one end with the pliers, not with the cutting part of the pliers but with the clamp, twisting it, putting my finger through the loop at this end and just twisting it, then moving the pliers up a little bit, clamping down again, twisting. Taking one part of the wire Okay, so I've baked the two figures and I'm at the stage of wiring the limbs to them. I've wired the limbs to this figure and I'm going to show you how to wire the last. I've wired the legs to this figure and I'm going to show you how to wire the two hands and forearms to it. Just lost a piece of wire a minute. Okay, so wire the correct thickness, or if it might be quite difficult because you have to judge the size of a tiny hole like that. So you get any old wire, this is copper wire, and I had to twist it because it was about half the thickness I needed. It was 0.6 millimeters. I cut a piece. Oh, my pliers is not working. I cut a piece and I took the two ends, held them together, wrapped them around my finger actually, more or less straightened it, and then twisted it with my finger. And when one part was fairly twisted, I held it a bit further up, twisted some more, and so on, moving my finger towards the hand that's twisting until you get a reasonably consistently twisted wire, and the same thickness all the way along. Then I cut an approximate length, I pop it through the hole I want, I bend it at the shoulder or the hip where I think I'm going to need to bend it. I take the relevant hand, I slip it on the end without any glue at this point, just to see how far it comes. Now hands generally come, stand up just to I guess halfway down the thigh, though my arms are quite long, I think. So, and seeing as this is a child, I think with children the arms are going to be a tiny bit shorter. So at the moment I think that's too long, so I'm going to slip the wire back into the shoulder, bend it again, and have a look where the length comes now. I think that looks better. So keeping that bend of the wire at the shoulder, I'm going to get my super glue, which is Gorilla Super Glue Gel, tap it on its nose, squeeze a bobble onto the end, just a tiny bit onto the end of the wire, take my hand and slide it on, actually twisting round and around to make sure it goes fully into the hole. Then you don't need to hold it, the glue will set pretty much immediately. You bend the wire at the other shoulder, cut again the approximate place you think you need it, always cutting a little bit longer, so it's best to be on the safe side. You take the other hand and slip it on, see where it comes. Okay, so that's a bit long. You cut it again, only cut tiny bits off, because if one limb is a bit longer than the other, what you can do, I really must buy a new pliers. I really must get a new pliers. What you can do is keep twisting the wire and it gets a bit shorter. So that's what I'm going to do now, instead of guessing and ending up having wire that's too short, because then it's impossible to get out because you've already super glued it to this arm here. So I'm going to tap my Gorilla Glue on its nose again, put a bead of super glue on the end of the wire, take my hand, pop it on, and there we go. There is my little girl, and there's my toddler. Now, next step is to wind wool around the limbs, and for this I use a different glue because I hate using super glue. In fact, at the moment, before I go any further, I'm going to sand the super glue off my hands with a nail file, because I usually get it everywhere, and indeed I've got it all over my plate. Good job, it's a very cheap old plate which is going to be thrown out. And I'm going to use this, no, I'm going to use my glue gun. I'm going to use my glue gun to run a trace of glue along the wire, and then taking some wool, and I might as well use the same wool I'm going to use for the hair. I'm going to wrap, probably double thickness to save time, wrap the wool over the limb like that. And when I get to the end, I'm going to put a tiny bit of glue from the glue gun on, wrap the wool once more to seal it, and then trim the end off so that I have a nice plump limb, not this bit of wire at the moment. And I'll come back to you when I've done that. Okay, so I've wrapped wool around the 2 arms and 1 leg, and I'm just going to show you how I do the last one, although it's pretty self-explanatory and you probably understood what I meant before. Take a bit of wool, having dotted super glue along the wire, bend the other limbs out of the way, and wrap fairly tightly and evenly around the wire. First down, then up. And you can do this with pretty much any colour wool, but it depends what the colour of the cloth on top is going to be, because if it's a light colour cloth like white or yellow or pink, then you need to have a light colour wool. And also it depends how closely fitting the clothes are going to be, because if they're very closely fitting, you need this to be very neat indeed. In fact, I wouldn't really recommend doing this. I would recommend moulding the whole limb in Fimo and doing without it bending, but moulding the limb so that you can actually glue the fabric around it tightly, and with the Fimo achieve exactly the shape you want. So the figure is completely wooled out now, and you just snip the ends off. Because my figure is going to have a dress on, it doesn't have to be that neat. If it was a suit, remember with some of my other figures up there, some of the gentlemen, I did fitted suits, and for those, as I said, I moulded the arms and sometimes the legs in Fimo. And there is a way you can joint a Fimo limb. You do the top half of the limb in Fimo and the bottom half, i.e. leaving the elbow or knee blank. So you do this bit in Fimo, that bit in Fimo, and then you mould them so that they bend together, so they can join together, and you do a hole in each one and put the wire through so it's jointed. But anyway, that's requires a bit more modelling, and for these 2 figures I didn't have to do that. So now I'm just going to wire the little toddler, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, so now I have my 2 figures, and they each have the wool around their limbs. So now they are ready to be painted. Now the first layer of paint is a flesh colour. As you can see, I've mixed up a kind of flesh colour on my plate here, just with acrylic paints. Watercolour won't really work on Fimo. In fact, it won't work at all. It won't stick to it. So, and oil just moves around. So acrylic is your best bet. Mix up a flesh colour paint, and then, hang on, I'll just get a piece of tissue. It's best not to have tissue that's too fluffy, so not really toilet roll, but like the stiff kind of brown napkins you get in some cafes or coffee shops. And then plaster the figure with your flesh colour paint, just liberally wherever the flesh is going to show. Don't worry about doing the torso where it's not. And then immediately wipe it off. And what this does is it lends a 3-dimensional quality to the figure. Otherwise, it really does look like baked Fimo rather than flesh. So you keep wiping it off until just a residue is left in the indentations of the figure. So do the same with the hands. And seeing as these legs and shoes are going to be covered in tights, either painted or fabric, I haven't really decided yet, and painted shoes, there's really no need to paint the legs and feet. But now we have a figure which looks just a little bit more lifelike, although that's not really coming up that much on the camera. And if you feel it needs more, a deeper layer, just go over again. And wipe off. And it really doesn't matter if it gets on the wool, because the wool is going to be covered. Fingers are really good for getting the last pieces, the last bits of the paint off as well. So there's one done, let's do the other one. I think maybe I need a little bit more pink actually, so I'm just putting a bit more pink into my flesh colour. Then slapping it all over the places, the skin that's going to be visible. I may as well do the hands at the same time, because a couple of seconds doesn't really matter. And wipe away. Oh, actually I forgot, I have to do the feet on this figure as well, because this little toddler is barefoot. So I'll just wipe the paint off the head. And then carry on with the feet. Making sure to get it into all the little indentations of the toes. The most important bit to be painted are the little dents and grooves. So press the paint in and then wipe away. And now hopefully you can see, put it against my hair which is a bit darker, you can see that the feet look a little bit more lifelike. You can see the toes and the face, hopefully. Great. So now we let that dry, and the good thing about acrylic is it dries pretty much instantaneously, and then we get a different brush and we get ready to paint the face. Now you really should use a smaller brush than I have here, but for some reason I seem to have lost mine, so I'm going to have to use the brush that I have and a toothpick. And I did used to paint some of the models I did before with toothpicks, just dotting bits of paint on the end, because it's so small, and I actually found it easier to control a toothpick than a brush. So now we're going to do the whites of the eyes, and rather than a complete, a pure white, I'm going to use a sort of oatmeal beige, because actually the whites of people's eyes are never really white. And I'm going to dot a little bit in each eye, like that. I don't know if you can see it. Okay. And get the other end of the toothpick and kind of move it around a little bit. In fact, I definitely prefer toothpicks to brushes. Much easier to control the paint at this level. And also at this stage, if there are any inconsistencies in the modelling, because it's very difficult modelling a face exactly the same both sides on such a small scale, when you come to paint you can even those out. The same principle applies to making up a real life face. The parts you want to recede you make darker, and the parts you want to come forward you paint lighter. So I'm just doing the irises of the eye. And because the acrylic sets pretty much immediately, if you do paint a bit you don't want, all you do is you get a clean toothpick and you just scrape it off. It's just really, really easy. So there we go. There are the irises done. And now, because this brilliant acrylic paint has dried, we can go straight ahead. I'm sorry, the whites of the eyes. And we can go straight ahead and next up do the irises. Now, I'm going to mix a fairly pale blue, so take a tiny bit of blue. Again, I'm mixing with a toothpick, and mix it with the beige, a bit more beige, and a little bit of blacky brown to make it more natural. And sometimes there's just no way to know how a colour will fare until you put it on the figure. So now I've got a kind of grey, which actually is closer to very pale blue eyes than a true blue. So now I'm going to just dot this in the centre of the eyes and see how it looks. And I think this actually might be pretty perfect. And you want to pretty much cover the white of the eye with the colour of the iris. Otherwise the figure looks like this, staring and a bit manic. And a little bit too much paint on that side, so I'll take it off. And just show you what I've done. Don't know if you can see that. And just even it up, so take a toothpick and straighten the line at the bottom on the one side, because one eye looks a little bit bigger than the other one at the moment. And take it down at the top to make the size of the eyes the same. And we still need to make the left eye a little bit bigger, so take some more of the iris colour and put it on. And now we need the pupil, which is just black. And you need a nice clean point to a toothpick, not with previous paint. Load a little bit of black on, but not too much, because you don't want to actually a 3D bobble, and just pop it on. And you might have to wait a little bit longer than I'm waiting for the iris paint to dry. Yeah, and I think I will have to. Well, it's quite tricky actually getting the iris and the pupil in just the right place. A fraction to the left or the right, and they look cross-eyed, or the opposite of cross-eyed. And I think I might have to go over those eyes again later, because the pupils are rather large. But they might be alright when I go around the eyes with the brown colour, which is going to mimic the lash line. So I'm just going to mix a little bit of brown up. And this little girl has blonde hair, so really fair. So it's more like a mousy browny blonde than a true brown. Get some on my toothpick and begin to trace the shape of the eyes. think I may actually have to buy a very tiny brush to do this, because the toothpicks are good for dotting colour, but not good for describing a line of colour as a paintbrush would. So for all my waxing lyrical of the superior powers of painting with toothpicks, I may actually have to come back to that with a brush, which is annoying because it means I have to wait till tomorrow because the shops are shut now. Now, for cheeks, all you need is a tiny little bit of red. Rub it around on the plate and dot it onto the cheeks. It's dry. You can see it's so dry by the time I've rubbed it around on my finger that barely any comes out on the cheek. And when it does come out on the cheek, rub it around again. If it's setting too quickly, a tiny bit of spit doesn't go amiss. Dot it on again. A little bit of spit helps. We want the faintest of blushes here. Nothing too severe. And I actually usually like to take it up to the temples and even onto the tip of the nose, because it makes it more natural. And now we need it to go onto the lips. So I'm mixing a little bit of red and a bit of beige. And onto her pretty lips. The only trouble is when you mix red with white or beige and you put it on flesh colour Fimo, it always looks too pale and too pasty and chalky and not real. So I often end up putting more or less neat red on and then wiping it off again pretty quickly to get a truly natural lip colour. Though that is easier said than done. And particularly on a child where you don't want them to look like they're wearing makeup, you really, really have to wipe that off again pretty quickly. And sometimes you have to, as in this case, reapply it many times in order to build up that very, very pale lip tint rather than a kind of what looks like a covering of the lips. So the good thing about acrylic paints and Fimo is you can always return, and you can even wipe it off with acetone or nail varnish remover. You can completely start again, and you can even possibly do it after you've wigged the doll, but I would suggest not doing that because you might get some paint on the hair. In any case, I'm going to go back and have a go at my pupil again. I don't like to be beaten. And I'm going to try once more to describe the line of the eye, though I think I may have to buy a tiny brush. I seem to lose tiny brushes. I just don't know where they get to. And they're really expensive, so it's annoying. Okay, for now that's alright. Sometimes I find it difficult to ascertain how well the painting of the face is working until I put the hair on. So having said it's difficult painting after I wig, sometimes I just wig when the face is not going that well, as it isn't now. I mean, I'm not that pleased with it, and so I'm going to wig the doll, and then it'll help me see what I need to do differently. So, okay, so I've painted both faces. They're not ideal, but as I said, I will go back once I've wigged them. And so now it's the wigging we're concentrating on. I've got some golden brown hair, viscous doll hair, and in order to cut one end in order to glue it at the parting, I'm just combing it out with a pin, and then I'm going to trim, slide it off my plate and trim a straight line. Then I'm going to get rid of the excess here, take my glue, again my Gorilla gel glue, give it a tap on the nozzle. Now the little girl has a very easy hairstyle because it's parted in the middle. So you put a tiny bit of Gorilla Glue into approximately the centre of her head, just slightly to one side of it actually, and then taking your viscose doll hair, you lay it the opposite way and press it down firmly onto the Gorilla Glue. Now as you can see, it's too thick to stick at the back, so I'm going to be putting a little bit more Gorilla Glue and a little bit more thickly this time onto the back, and take it right down to the base of her skull, and keep pressing away. A bit tricky because sometimes it sticks to your fingers. And keep pressing away. Then, when it's glued on one side of the head, you flip it back over. You flip it back on itself, in other words, and in some places you can see it hasn't glued in a straight line. It doesn't matter quite so much at the back of the head because we'll be brushing it over. But this bit, for instance, we'll need that bit, so you need to put a little bit more glue here, pop it on. Use something other than your finger to press it down that doesn't stick so much as flesh. And then you put more glue onto the hair itself, being careful not to stick any to the bottle. Right around again, slightly to one side of the parting, and you flip the hair back over to make more or less a straight parting. And the front here, we need more glue to make the partings straight. We need to press it down more. And I'm going to re-stick this bit at the back, glue it at a slightly different angle. Pop a bit more glue on the back here. Fumes have got to me. Super glue is one of the things I hate most in the world. Right, so I'm just pressing the hair into place. And a needle sometimes comes in useful again at this point. Wigging is my least favourite bit of making these figures because the hair gets absolutely everywhere. Okay, so now we come to the wigging, and what I've done is use no nails glue to, I actually recorded this but then lost it. So I took my hair, I took a length of hair, hang on, I took a length of hair, teased it apart from the rest. I combed it out like so. I cut it to have a nice clean edge. I placed a line of glue to the left or right of the parting, depending on which side I was gluing. Then I placed my hair cut edge towards the ear of that side of the head. I pressed it down on the glue, waited for it to set. Then I placed a line of glue on the underside of this hair and bent it back over and stuck it in place. So we get a nice, we don't get a raw edge at the parting, in other words. Oh, I've got glue in my hair. Yeah, something glue. Oh, here. And I did the same on the other side. And the good thing about no nails is it does take a pretty long time to set, so you can keep manipulating your little wig into a more natural position and adding strands where there are bald bits. Then I kept combing it with a toothpick while holding it in place at the newly glued parting, and then I cut it in a neat line at the back. Well, actually, on this little girl, it isn't a neat line, it's more of a V shape, and afterwards we can use hairspray and glue to style it. At this stage, just cut the basic shape. Okay, and then cut into it a little bit because we don't want it to be too sharp a line. And there's the hair done. Just making sure that everything is pressed down. We don't want any gaps at the parting. And it helps to tie a little ribbon. You don't want an elastic band because it might stick, but you want to try and set it in place. So just get a ribbon and do a little loose knot there around the neck. I mean a bow. Because while the no nails, the last stage of it is setting, that will help. Now hopefully I won't lose the next video I make of wigging the toddler, and which I'm now going to try and do. So again, I'm going to tease my hair out to thin it and to get a neat edge. And it does waste a bit of hair, but the thing is you just simply can't glue it if it's too thick. So I'm combing it out with a toothpick, then I take my scissors and I cut a clean edge to make the parting. Now in this doll I'm going to do a side parting, just checking I'm still recording. I am. I'm going to do a side parting. My no nails glue, as I think I might have said, the top is glued on, so I have to take a bit from inside, a dollop and a toothpick, take my little person, put it slightly to one side of the parting. No, sugar, sorry, it's a side parting. So put it even further down. Doesn't really matter because the whole scalp's going to be covered and you're not going to see any glue anyway. So now we're not going to see the ears, so you can put it right the way down the side of the head and on the back of the head, because we're going to do one half at a time. Take your hair, or take a bit of it anyway, and the edges become uneven again. Cut the edge. Try and kind of push it together and press it down into place. Hold it for a second or two. Hold it. Hold it. Okay, now we need to put some no nails glue on top of this. Take a fair amount of no nails glue because, checking I'm still recording, yes, because we don't want to, you know, pull the hair away from the head. So you have to kind of wallop it on. Terribly messy businesses. I'm sure other miniaturists are not half as messy as I am, but I get into a terrible tiswas, and sometimes I don't know how I ever get out to the tiswas. This is one of the reasons I haven't made miniatures for many years. So now I've got the no nails glue on the underside of my my little person's head. I'm going to bend the hair over at the front and press it in place on top of the no nails. Now I do think, even though I said don't be sparing with the no nails, I've got a tiny bit much here, so I'm just going to scrape some off. Great thing about this glue is, as I've said many times before now, at least I think I have, at least I think I was recording when I said it, it doesn't set for ages, so you can keep on manipulating this, taking it off, taking it on, moving the hair around for, I don't know, probably a good 15-20 minutes, which is what you need when you're wigging, because it's a terribly difficult business. So then you put that on, pull it down as it would normally fall, and unfortunately I think this is too fine and we're going to see the hair there, so I'm going to have to try and do something else. Yes, I'm going to have to try and put some more on. So I'm going to cut my straight edge again. I'm going to press it on underneath. Press it on, press it on, press it on. Put more glue on the underside. And press it down again. Sometimes if you've made a mess as I have with the parting, you can unstick the whole thing where the gluey bit is, push the gluey bit down further on the head and make the parting a bit higher up. Then you fold it and press it to the head, and you hope. You hope and hope and hope. And you take your finger away and see how it's going. You get a toothpick to manipulate it a little bit. Look at the state of my hands. I can't bear it. I can't bear the feel of this stuff on my hands. Yeah, so now I'm going to fold it. Yeah, this is not going well. This is not going well. I wish the video of wigging the other doll had been saved, but I can't really unwig her to wig her again to show you. So, gosh. This is how not to wig a 1/12 scale figure. But I'll be able to salvage it. I believe I can salvage it. At I think I can. Now I'm kind of combing it, and I'm going to see how bad it looks after I've combed it with my toothpick. Yeah, it looks pretty bad. Okay, I might have to start again with this, which is a shame because I haven't got that much hair. Okay, so good thing about no nails is you can start again. You get it off. Do make sure though that it doesn't stick to the face as it has on this figure, because once it does set, you can't get it off. So you've got a long time to manipulate it, but also it's really hot beneath this lamp, so that's not helping setting quicker. Right, I'm going to try again, doing the bigger part of the hair this time. So I'm putting my no nails just to the side of the parting, taking my hair, cutting a clean edge, pressing it down, cut edges towards the ear, pressing it down with the fleshy bit of my hand, press, 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 press. Right, now get a bit more no nails to catch these ends down here. Get a bit more no nails to put on the top of this. Press it on with your finger if necessary. Okay, so then turn it over and press it down. Okay, this is really not working out well. I wonder if I turned it around back to front, would it work? Wow, it's better. It's really a lot better. Okay, I'm going to do that then. Ever resourceful, that's what you need to be. Never give up, ever resourceful. To comb it out at the front a bit here. Now we need to glue it under here a bit. Yep. Stick it down there. Excuse me. Just going to cut it off at approximately the right length, because it'll help me see what's happening. Okie dokie. Yep, this is not going well. I'm going to take some more hair, tease it out. I don't even know if I'm going to bother doing a parting this time. The parting is not going well on this doll, so maybe I should just try and stick it down as it is. Who knows? So I'm sticking some more glue on the other side of the head that has yet to be wigged. and I'm taking a bit of hair and I'm sticking it down. And because the one side is such a mess, I'm going to put some more glue on top of it to try and cover the mess, upon which I will stick some more hair. Well, it's better. It's not good. It's a bit better. Maybe I can make her a hat. Oh. I'm getting very hot and bothered here beneath these lamps, and because this is rather trying. She looks a bit like a troll. She's not meant to look like a troll. I need a tiny bit of no nails to kind of make this bit go up there. It's very difficult when you don't want to see the glue. You need a tiny bit of it. Gosh, there's quite a bold bit there. I'm going to take a bit more glue, put it on the top, take the bit that's falling off, and glue it again. I'm getting around the fact that the parting has been messed up now. Sorry, I'm still not sure where to look. There, which is where my face is, or here, I think is here. And actually sort of making the hair go round in a whirl. So the raw ends are towards the back of the figure. And so you're not seeing the raw ends, but there's the illusion of a parting. No. A bit more glue. A bit more glue. Yeah. I think I might have to make her a hat, or get her some sort of hat. I imagine a little crochet kind of beret, a big floppy kind of thing, like a child in the 30s might wear. She looks like a bit of an impoverished child from the 30s to me. A bit like one of the children from the family from One End Street. I don't know if any of you read those books by, I think it was Eve Garnett. They were really, really wonderful, unique. I think they were children's stories, but I think adults would love them just as much. There's this very poor family. I'm not sure where they lived, some city in Britain, and there was Mr. and Mrs. Ruggles, and I think they had 7 children. And they were always trying to make ends meet. Okay, so this is not as bad now, so the moral is to persevere. As Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going. This is not exactly hell, but it's kind of. I mean, look at that. I hate dry stuff on my hands, so the moment this is finished, I'm going to take sandpaper to them and sand off most of my skin. And then I'm going to get into a shower and relax, because my shoulders are absolutely killing me, because my posture is very bad. Another reason I'm glad I don't do too much miniature work anymore. So now I'm just kind of sort of trying to cover bald bits in the back of the head. I'm just taking another clean toothpick. and trying to get a bit of the no-nails off, which is showing at the parting. Oh, excuse me, hiccups. And trying to make the hair cover it. Okay. Now, oh goodness, it's still not sticking. Right, okay. Okay, oh my goodness. Yeah, a berry is definitely going to be in order. So I'm just pressing it down, and I'm going to just cut it roughly to the length. Rough being the operative word throughout this little sculpture, as it is a complete mess. So I'm just combing a bit of no nails out of the end of this. And I'm actually going to cut these ends off. And when I put the hat on, none of this will matter. So as you can see, the back of the head is really not good. It's really not very good at all. But from the front, it's actually okay. I mean, when the sides are going to be pressed down. I'm just going to try and even up that. You can style later with hairspray and PVA glue. At the moment I'm just cutting it approximately. Okay, so the wigging is done. So now we come on to now I think, hang on, I'll just try and find a ribbon to tie around this one as well. I think I've got another ribbon. Nope, I'll try and use one of my hair bands. I'm not sure it'll stay on there, and I also don't want to risk pulling the hair off, but I'm going to give it a go. No, too risky. The hair is not set yet, so I'm just going to have to leave it stuck up like that. So, now the first thing is to clear up your area, and the way I do that is to brush it on the floor for now, and before I go any further, I simply have to clean my hands. So, I'll be back. So, now we come to clothing the figures. I bought a little bag of lavender in Liberties because the fabric was the smallest print I could find, even in Liberties. And this means I have to be very careful not to make mistakes when making the dress for this figure, because I don't have much to play around with. So, having emptied the lavender, I'm going to cut the bag so that it's a flat piece of fabric once again. Making sure to cut where the seam is, because otherwise I waste it even more. I want to keep the pieces whole as I can, if that makes sense. So I cut away. I wonder if I could rip it. No. So, cut this. Oh, sorry. So, the other day I filmed the completion of these two figures. I'm just going to show you. These two little figures. A toddler and a small girl. And although they're not quite finished yet, I did in fact film over an hour's footage of me dressing them. Unfortunately, my laptop decided to stop recording, so I've lost the whole tutorial or session, and I can't make another figure to close to show you just just to show you me clothing a figure again. So I'm going to do my very best to talk you through in very clear language how I clothe these two figures, and I'm really sorry about what happened to the video. This is sometimes technology for you. So first of all, with the little girl, I think you might remember I told you I got a small bag of lavender from Liberty's because the fabric was so fine. It was cotton, and it was so small. I think you can see it better if I put her over here. And there was just enough to make the whole dress. I used this ready-made seam of the bag to form the hem of the dress. I cut a long rectangle for the skirt, and I measured approximately from her mid-shin to her waist for the width of the skirt, and then I just gathered it manually with fabric glue. The fabric glue didn't turn out to be a great success, in fact, because it took a very long time to set. So I would not recommend using UHU fabric glue. Try another brand, not that one, because it takes just far too long to set. But in any case, I gathered the skirt, and at the back I made a glued seam. So I simply turned over a ragged edge of the fabric with glue underneath it, pressed it down to form what looks like a seam, then put glue on the other piece of fabric on the edge and press them together so it looks like a sewn seam. In fact, it looks neater than a sewn seam would be at this scale. For the bodice, I simply cut out a rough rectangle shape. I made another sort of fake seam with the glue at the bottom of the bodice, i.e. I turned over the rough edge and glued it to make it look as though it was a seam. Then I cut a little V for the neck, I cut chinks for the arms, and I put that in place. I cut two rectangles for the sleeves. I made two fake glue seams for the cuffs. I glued them underneath the arms with the same fake glue seam again, turning over the ragged edge and gluing it down to make it look like a seam, then pressing that over the other ragged edge. And I did the same for the back of the dress, the back of the bodice, a rectangle, and glued it in place. Then I took a small piece of lace that I showed you I also got from Liberty and put it on for the collar. I painted her stockings cream in cream acrylic paint and her shoes in red acrylic paint. And now I'm just going to varnish the shoes. If I can undo the varnish, which I can't. I don't know what is happening with the varnish. Okay, so I'm going to have to get some clear nail varnish to varnish her shoes, and I'll be back. So I'm just using some of my clear nail varnish and going quickly over the red of the shoes to make them look like leather rather than the matte of the cream acrylic paint on the legs, which I hope will look like the fabric of tights. I did consider using the white jersey from my pants. I think I showed you I took a pair of, actually quite a new pair of pants, and cut them up, because sometimes the very fine knitted cotton can resemble wool in 1/12 scale. But in the end, I thought the legs were so thin that it was going to be so difficult, too difficult, making the seam at the back, and they would appear to be too thick once the fabric was on, so I just painted them. So now I've varnished the shoes, and if you remember, I did paint the face with acrylic paints, but now to finish the face I'm going to use watercolour pencils, and these come in very useful actually, because you have more control with these than a paintbrush. And I'm just going to take a pale brown colour to trace the outlines of her eyes and give them a little bit more definition. And again, any mistakes you can simply wash off with water, although I just use spits then because it's quicker. And I think I need to use a slightly paler brown because of her hair. So maybe this colour, actually this, I think that would be a bit too sandy. Just looking at my colours. These two are possible, that's possible, that's possible, this is possible. Okay, so I take these and I sharpen them, make sure I have a nice sharp point. Now let's see how this blonde colour looks. I think it'll be too fair. I don't think it'll show up at all actually. Oh, it does show up a little bit. Okay, so that can work for eyebrows then. And I can go over it with something else if I need to. So no, that will be too fair. So the next best colour is this. No, but that looks too gingery. So I'm going to have to go for this brown. Okay, and the lips need just a little bit more colour. So I'm going to take a nice warm red and go over those, being careful not to let it look as though she's got lipstick on, which we don't want. Maybe even paler colour again. But the pale colours tend to look too matte, that's the problem. And not real. What you need is a darker colours, but in the form of a tint. So now I think you can see her face looks much more completed. I've done the eyebrows, the lips. I know you can't really see her cheeks very much in this light, but they are rosy. I might just put a tiny bit more on her cheeks for the... No, that's too... for the sake of... Yep. And then I think all that remains to be done is dot a little bit of black in the pupils of her eyes. I hope I've got a black. Yes. Now, for the pupils of her eyes, when you need to do really tiny and really exact work, besides sharpening the pencil, I just lick the tip. Going over the one eyebrow again a little bit. Okay, so now her face is completed, and I'm quite happy with that. And I will post a good quality resolution photo. I'll somehow insert it into this video because unfortunately the camera on this laptop is not good and I haven't got my lighting set up yet. Now, the next thing is to spray the dress and spray her hair. So I'm using spray starch for the dress. Shake it up and spray both sides of the fabric, underneath the dress and on top, in order to really penetrate the fabric. Try not to get it on my laptop. And then, when it's completely drenched, sculpt it in as many little pleats as you can. Gosh, the smell of this takes me back to when I was making the miniatures before, in the cottage in the woods. It's not an altogether happy memory. Right, so I'm just going to hold this in place, and while I'm holding that down, I'm also going to shake up the hairspray and spray her hair. I've just noticed a tiny bit of glue in her hair, which I'm just getting out with my fingers before I spray it with hairspray. Okay. Okay, now you can take a needle, but I find that this quite small bristled brush is great for the miniatures hair. And now what I'm doing is brushing the hair down in the direction I want it to go. The main challenge with miniatures, with regards to the hair when you're sculpting it, is simply getting it to stay down. And at this point, you can also see where it needs to be cut again, all the little stray ends at the back, which you couldn't see earlier because it wasn't staying down. And there's another annoying little bit of glue. And at this point you can cut off any stray hairs. Okay, so just give the little dress a tug again. Keep holding the hair down. Keep tugging at the dress. And then, when you're pretty happy with it, you're going to place it somewhere warm to set. And then you can think of, well, I'm going to think up a name for this little girl. I wish I could remember what story she came from, which Christian Birmingham story, but I can't. It might have even been a classic fairy story, because he does illustrate those sometimes. I just want the hair to come over the shoulder a little bit, so I'm pressing it down there as it would fall. And then adding just a tiny bit more hairspray here. Okay, I'm going to place her over by the radiator now. And I can stop fiddling with her hair. And in order to make her skirt lie flat, you need the slightest weight. So I'm just going to wrap a little bit of ribbon around it. Not even tie it, but just wrap it. Let it fall loosely around it. So there. Okay, so now we move on to the toddler. There is no point starching. Oh, I have to tell you how I made the nightshirt as well. So these are my pants, as I told you, and this is the knitted cotton that works really well on this scale because the fabric, the pattern of the fabric looks like a tiny knit. So I managed to make this whole nightshirt with just one seam. It was a long rectangle, and I wrapped it around the front, cut slits underneath the arms, glued them with the fake glue seams underneath the sleeves as on the other dress, and then at the back wrapped the rectangle around the back, cut up a little rectangle for the back of the bodice, and then glued it here just once to save gluing and to save bulk. Now, there's no point spray starching this because spray starch won't do very much to this type of fabric. But what we can do is we can hairspray the hair. And again, as with the starch, try and get under the hair as well, if under and over. Then we take our brush and we sculpt the hair essentially. And then, because it's easier to see once more again, we cut off the stray ends, cut off the long pieces, and we press it down. If some pieces of hair are particularly stubborn and the brush isn't getting to them, what you can do is use a fairly large needle and just tease them into place where you want them to go. You've got to be reasonably gentle doing this because the needle can actually cut the hair off like a blade. A good idea is to put your hand at the roots or where the hair is glued to keep holding that in place, and then gently kind of brush the hair into place. We need to needle comb the other side as well. And we need to do a tiny bit more trimming with the scissors. And then press it down. Now, because this little girl is probably getting ready for bed, I thought I could actually use one of the miniatures I made when I was actually in my about 22, I think. I made this miniature, and it's Hilda the Hippo from the old Richard Scarry books. I don't know if anyone remembers them. I absolutely love Richard Scarry storybooks, and I've still got mine from when I was a kid, and I think they were second hand then. But this actually looks quite a lot like a child's toy, and it's about the right size for this little model, so I thought I could, when I finished with her anyway, when her hair is set, I thought I could fix Hilda the Hippo to her as if it's her bedtime toy and she's taking it with her to bed. It's actually quite a big toy, but hang on, let me just get her hair in place. Give it another little brush. Problem is, every time you brush the hair, a few more strands appear that you have to cut off, so it's sort of never ending. But you have to stop somewhere, and I'm stopping here, and as I said, I'm going to fix Hilda Hippo to this little girl and then insert a picture of her later. In fact, I might have her hold Hilda Hippo by the hand. That would be pretty cute actually, but Hilda Hippo's arms can't move. In which case, could I have her hold Hilda Hippo by the foot? Anyway, I will include a photo of these two finished models, which now stand and are completely poseable. And thank you for watching, if you have watched, the whole chaotic journey of making these two little figures. And I'm really sorry I lost the footage of me clothing them. But it was literally just cutting pieces of fabric that were the approximate shapes to cover the relevant parts of the body, and then gluing fake seams, and then gluing those pieces of fabric onto the body, and cutting as I went. So here they are. In fact, they could almost be sisters, which is quite nice. Yeah, I didn't mean them to be sisters, and one is definitely prettier than the other, but just remembered I haven't done pupils on the little one, sorry. So I'll just make her eyebrows a little bit clearer and give her slightly rosy cheeks.